In a surprising turn of events that has caught global attention, former U.S. President Donald Trump has reportedly decided to halt planned strikes against Iran's energy infrastructure following what he described as very good talks. This sudden shift from escalation to diplomacy is raising questions across the international community. What changed? What was discussed? And what it means for the future of U.S.-Iran relations and global stability. The development comes at a time when tensions between the United States and Iran had been steadily rising, with concerns of a broader regional conflict looming large. Reports suggested that U.S. military options were actively being considered, specifically targeting Iran's critical energy sector and industry that forms the backbone of the country's economy. These potential strikes were expected to significantly impact Iran's oil production and export capabilities, which could have had ripple effects across global energy markets. However, the narrative appears to have shifted dramatically. According to Trump, the talks held between representatives led to a very good outcome, prompting a decision to pause any immediate military action. While exact details of the discussions remain limited, the tone suggests that both sides may have found common ground, at least temporarily. To avoid escalation, this move is significant for several reasons. First, it signals a willingness, at least from Trump's perspective, to prioritize negotiation over confrontation. Second, it reflects the delicate balance of power and diplomacy in a region that has historically been volatile. And third, it introduces a layer of uncertainty regarding the long-term strategy of the United States toward Iran. To fully understand the importance of this development, it's essential to look at the broader context. U.S.-Iran relations have been strained for decades, dating back to the 1979 Iranian Revolution and the subsequent hostage crisis. Over the years, tensions have ebbed and flowed, often intensifying around issues such as nuclear development, regional influence, and economic sanctions. In recent years, the situation escalated significantly after the United States withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal, formerly known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA. The agreement, which was signed in 2015, aimed to limit Iran's nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. However, the U.S. withdrawal led to the reimposition of sanctions and increased pressure on Iran's economy. Iran responded by gradually stepping away from its commitments under the agreement, raising concerns about nuclear proliferation. At the same time, incidents in the Persian Gulf, including attacks on oil tankers and confrontations involving military forces, further heightened tensions. Against this backdrop, any talk of strikes on Iran's energy infrastructure would have been seen as a major escalation. Such actions could have triggered retaliatory measures from Iran, potentially targeting U.S. allies in the region or disrupting key shipping routes like the Strait of Hormuz, a critical choke point for global oil supply. This is why Trump's decision to halt the strikes is being viewed as a pivotal moment. It suggests that diplomacy, even in highly charged situations, can still play a role in de-escalating conflict. However, it also raises important questions about what was actually achieved during these talks. Were there concrete agreements made? Did Iran offer concessions? Was the outcome more about reducing immediate tensions? And perhaps most importantly, is this a temporary pause or the beginning of a more sustained diplomatic effort? From an analytical perspective, several implications emerge. For one, global energy markets are likely to respond positively to this development. The threat of strikes on Iran's energy sector had created uncertainty, potentially driving up oil prices. With the situation now appearing to stabilize, at least in the short term, markets may experience a degree of relief. For countries heavily dependent on oil imports, this is particularly important. Stability in energy prices can have wide-ranging economic benefits, from controlling inflation to supporting industrial growth. Conversely, any disruption in supply could have had severe consequences for both developed and developing economies. Another key implication lies in regional geopolitics. The Middle East remains one of the most strategically important and volatile regions in the world. Any conflict involving Iran has the potential to draw in multiple actors, including neighboring countries and global powers. By stepping back from military action, the United States may be signaling a desire to avoid a broader conflict that could destabilize the region further. This could also open the door for other diplomatic initiatives, potentially involving international organizations or third-party mediators. However, skepticism remains. Critics may argue that such decisions are often tactical rather than strategic, aimed at buying time or managing public perception. Without transparency regarding the content of the talks, it's difficult to assess the true nature of the agreement. There's also the question of consistency. U.S. policy toward Iran has often been characterized by fluctuations, with periods of engagement followed by phases of pressure. This unpredictability can complicate diplomatic efforts, making it harder to build trust between the two sides. From Iran's perspective, the halt and strikes could be seen as a positive development, but it may also be approached with caution. Past experiences have shown that agreements can be reversed, and assurances may not always translate into long-term policy. For the international community, the focus will likely shift to monitoring the next steps. Will there be follow-up talks? Will sanctions policies change? And how will other global players, such as Europe, Russia, and China, respond to this development? Another important aspect to consider is domestic politics. Decisions related to foreign policy are often influenced by internal factors, including public opinion, political pressure, and upcoming elections. Trump's announcement of very good talks may also be aimed at projecting strength while avoiding the risks associated with military conflict. This dual approach, combining assertive rhetoric with diplomatic action, is not uncommon in international relations. It allows leaders to maintain a firm stance while keeping channels of communication open. At the same time, the role of communication cannot be overlooked. In today's interconnected world, statements made by political leaders can have immediate global impact. The phrasing of very good talks, while optimistic, leaves room for interpretation, highlighting the importance of clear and detailed communication in matters of international significance. Looking ahead, several scenarios are possible. The most optimistic outcome would involve continued dialogue leading to a broader agreement that addresses key issues such as nuclear development, sanctions, and regional security. This could pave the way for a more stable and predictable relationship between the United States and Iran. On the other hand, if the talks were limited in scope or failed to address underlying tensions, the current pause could be short-lived. In such a case, the risk of escalation would remain, and the situation could quickly revert to one of confrontation. There's also the possibility of a mixed outcome, where some progress is made but significant challenges persist. This is often the reality in complex diplomatic negotiations, where compromises are necessary and solutions are incremental rather than immediate. For viewers and global citizens, the key takeaway is the importance of staying informed and understanding the broader implications of such developments. International news is not just about distant events. It can have direct and indirect impacts on economies, security, and everyday life. The halt and strikes against Iran's energy targets serves as a reminder that even in moments of high tension, diplomacy can play a crucial role. It also underscores the need for continued engagement, transparency, and accountability in international relations. As the situation continues to evolve, all eyes will be on the next steps taken by both the United States and Iran. Will this moment mark the beginning of a new chapter, or is it simply a pause in an ongoing cycle of tension? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain: the decisions made now will have lasting implications for the region and the world. Stay informed, stay engaged, and if you want clear, unbiased updates on global events like this, make sure to follow the Federal Watch News channel and subscribe for more in-depth coverage.